go and witness to Jesus Christ, etc. All right, and then apostle, sent one, ambassador, emissary, and then set apart for the gospel. All right, letter B, his Lord. How does he describe the Lord?
Well, descendant of David.
Descendant of David, according to the flesh, right? So according to the flesh, he's a descendant of David, and Son of God in power and spirit, right? Spirit of holiness. So he is Son of God. And then when he this is one the answer key. We have an answer key. I don't always agree with the answer key, but it's a nice start for pastor and vicar to help lead through this. But he does call him Lord, right? So the author wants us to describe how he describes Lord, but what's significant about calling him Lord in the first place? Whenever the New Testament writers, and we talked about this in the Gospel of Mark, Lord is really shorthand for saying what? Say it louder. Who said it?
I said God.
God,
Yeah.
right? This is a shorthand way, or this is a way of proclaiming that Jesus is Yahweh Himself. Right? And it's a very significant term. So the Greek word is kurios. Thank you. The Greek word is kurios. The Hebrew word for just Lord, right? Little L-O-R-D is Adonai. Adonai. Whenever you see the capital L-O-R-D in the Old Testament, that's Yahweh. Yahweh, the name of God. But New Testament writers, whenever they proclaim that Jesus is Lord, there's more to it than simply saying that he's Adonai, that he's ruler. That's what Adonai is, right? So Vicar calls me Adonai. Lord and master, ruler, etc., right? And he wouldn't get this wrong. He means Adonai, right? But when the New Testament writers proclaim Lord, that Jesus is Lord, they're really proclaiming even more than that he's not just the Son of God, but that he's God Himself. He's God Himself. And then how else does he describe? He has one more kind of description of what Jesus does.
Promised by the prophets.
It is true, he is promised by the prophets. I didn't have that one. I would agree with that. That's another description. That's a description of Jesus, that he's promised by the prophets. And then what does he do?
Resurrection.
That is in there, isn't it? Spirit of holiness by his resurrection from the dead. Okay, I'll give you that one too. That's good. He is the resurrected Jesus.
Yep.
Good. And then one more.
He's the good news.
Always one more.
Verse 5 is
The very last part of verse 5. We have received grace and apostleship to bring about the obedience of faith. So this was a little harder. I mean, maybe harder to pick out, right? He's the giver of grace and faith, and I think that's an important first part of this book, because that's what the book is really all about, right? He's the giver. Huh?
He's the way to true life. No one comes to the Father.
Exactly, right? He is the giver of grace and faith. And so Paul establishes that right away. I mean, he doesn't say it like I said it, but the whole thing, by whom we have received grace and apostleship to bring about an obedience of faith for the sake of his name among the nations, including you who are called to belong to Jesus Christ. And that all actually is talking about Paul. We'll get to that a little bit later too. But Paul is talking about himself there. All right, almost chapel done. All right, and then his readers in Rome, they are
Called to be saved.
called to be saints, and what's the other description that he throws out?
Loved
Loved by God. Right, they're loved by God, and they're called to be saints. Actually, we weren't going to talk about it later. I did make a note on this. When Paul says in verse 5, we have received grace and apostleship, he's not talking about us. You have not received apostleship. He's really going back to verse 1 and describing himself and his apostleship again. Paul's apostleship. So why the heck does he say we? Why is there a first person plural there? We have received grace and apostleship. We don't really know. It's probably just Paul. Two options kind of. It's probably Paul just placing himself with the apostles. There's more than just Paul. There are other apostles. It could be also, some commentators think that there is maybe an apostle. One of the other 12 apostles are in Rome at the time. And it could be that as he's writing to the Roman Christians, that there is already an apostle who is working in Rome, and so he says we have received grace and apostleship. So we don't really know, but don't be confused by that. He's not saying that we have received grace and apostleship. You have not received apostleship, right? At least not apostleship like Paul, right? I mean, in a way we can say that we've been sent, and we'll get to that at some point here, I think. The Greek for servant may mean one who belongs to a master and has no freedom to leave, or one who willingly chooses to serve his master, like we said, and it's not probably not, like willingly is still sort of probably not completely accurate. In what way does servant apply to Paul? You may wish to review how Jesus called Paul, blah, blah, blah. We kind of said this already, right? That Paul is really ultimately a slave. Paul expresses complete subjection and devotion to Jesus. Paul has no choice but to witness, and yet he witnesses willingly, right? I mean, so this becomes kind of the dichotomy of being a slave of Jesus, right? There's this compulsion to serve, but at the same time, service is done willingly. And again, that's kind of something that Christians should think about more often, right? I think we really downplay what it means to serve Jesus. What it means to serve Jesus, and I can kind of do it sometimes and not other times, right? I mean, I can kind of serve half-heartedly, and that's not what's going on here with this word slave. This word slave means that you have absolutely no choice. There's an absolute compulsion as a Christian to serve Jesus. And then, at the same time though, it's not like kind of like slavery of the recent past, right? Where you have absolutely no choice and you resent it, right? That's not how we serve. That's not what it is. So you have absolutely no choice. There's a compulsion to serve Jesus as a child of God, as a Christian. You're compelled to do these things, but you don't resent it, right? The service is joyful.
Well, I think Keith needs to use that aspect when he's up there talking about painting and
right? You are a slave to Christ. You have absolutely no choice.
Yeah.
You have no choice in the matter, right? But it's right. I mean, any kind of stewardship, right? Whether it's our financial stewardship or our time and talent stewardship or whatever the vocational living that we do, right? You have no choice. You have no choice other than to be a good husband or wife. You have absolutely no choice, right? It kind of feeds into Bible class, which seems really harsh, right? I mean, there's really no good reason given for divorce unless your spouse leaves you, right? And then what do you do, right? There's no good reason, Amy was like, man, that's just so tough after Bible class. She was like, that's just so hard because there are people who really struggle in it. And it's like, so if you have somebody who's mentally ill, and I was like, yeah, it's not given in the Bible. Tough, absolutely, right? Cross to bear. And that sucks, and I'm so sorry for you if that's your cross to bear. But it's just not there, right? The compulsion for the Christian is to be a good spouse. That's it. And then we do it joyfully, no matter how bad life sucks. I mean, that's just like, how hard, God, I mean, holy crap. But
what this caused me to, I guess, think of is that a slave is everything you do, right? I mean, or if I'm a servant, I might serve you for a while, then I'll go golf for myself or whatever, right?
Right.
But when I'm a slave, everything I do has got to align with my master because
Yes.
no other existence.
See, I think that's exactly right. So I serve Jesus here, but then I go to the bar and maybe hook up with somebody and have premarital sex with somebody that I meet at the bar. It's like, that doesn't, right? Doesn't mean that you can't go to the bar. Maybe not. Maybe.
If the temptation is that
But-
you don't know.
But maybe not. So I go with a group of friends after work. It's like, okay, maybe that's okay, right? As long as there's no temptation to overdrink or towards inappropriate sexuality or whatever, right? Might be okay. And maybe even my actions can witness to people there, right? Or out on the golf course, right? It doesn't mean that you can't have fun and do things that you enjoy, but everything is done to the glory of God when you are a slave. When you are a slave, the compulsion is that everything is done to the glory of God. Period.
It changes my filter when I look at what I'm going to choose to do for me, as I just sit here thinking about the choices I make.
Did you say choose to do or used to do?
That I choose to do.
I was like, we don't need true confessions.
I could be that too.
Well, right, I want you later. I mean, for crying out, as I've become more spiritually mature, I look back on my life and go, those were really, really bad, sinful choices that didn't show that I was a slave to Christ. Right? I mean, absolutely, right? We can all do that. And that's why with my kids, right, I've always been like, yeah, I've done some of these things. You should not. Right? You should not. Because it's not who you are. It's not who you are in Christ.
That's why you have 10-second prayers. But when you're in a situation, I don't care what kind it is, and you're ready to let the tongue do its thing, then it's like, okay, God, shut me off.
Oh, good.
Just
I
real
didn't
quick.
want people to hear that as
No.
Carol only prays for 10 seconds at a time.
Well, some days that's true. Every 10 seconds.
Every 10 seconds. Nice. No, absolutely, right? All right, so in what way does servant apply to you? Well, I think we've got all that. Anybody want to say anything else there, right? You have been completely bought back from sin, death, and the power of the devil by the blood of Jesus, right? I mean, that's what makes you a slave. Again, the author doesn't do me service because the author keeps talking about servant, and I think it's more than that, right? You have been completely bought back from sin, death, and the power of the devil as a slave, right? Oh, you should also understand, if you're new to LifeLight, right? Wrong answers are okay, right? I mean, wrong answers are okay, and it's okay that the author sometimes is wrong, as far as I'm concerned also, right? That's just the way it is. Or that the author falls short of what maybe is good for us to talk about, right? So none of those things should trouble you. Every once in a while we're going to get to a question where I'm just like, I ask you to guess the mind of pastor sometimes. It's like, sometimes I read these questions and it's like, what on earth are you even asking, right? And that's okay too, right? You probably encounter that at times and you go, I don't have any clue what you're talking about here, right? Because I think sometimes you write a Bible study like this and it's obvious to the writer, it's obvious to the editor, right? And then it's not so obvious to the participant. So those things are okay too. We'll muddle through when we get, I think there's one on this study where it's like, I have no idea what they're talking about. All right, number 3, the word gospel means good news. Key to understanding the word gospel are the words promised and prophets. How did Jesus explain the relationship between Old Testament prophecy and the promises of his ministry? In Luke 24.
And the promise was about him,
All right, the promise was just completely about him, right?
and his ministry was to fulfill the promise.
He came to fulfill it.
And he came to fulfill the
Prophecies.
prophecies about him, right? Starting all the way back in Genesis 3:15, when God promised that the seed of the woman would.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I forgot to mention to LifeLight people that we do our car line, and some people have parked out here in those spots.
Huh, that's really unfortunate.
I know. Debbie just got a phone call from one of the preschool parents.
Where's the car?
Can you do it the best that you can today, or?
Yeah, I'll go out there and direct them.
Okay.
But,
Where are we not supposed to
So
park?
you're not
Make
supposed
it
to park
clear.
in the second bay?
Yes, in that middle section is where we do, remember how we used to do parking lot communion and we'd have lines of cars? That's what we're doing for our classes.
Oh, I'm parked.
So,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
okay.
bunch of
You're
It's
fine,
okay.
they'll be able to
We'll just
do
do
a
one
couple of
line.
lines or
We'll just
one
do a
line.
But if you can park farther back,
Oh.
that would be perfect.
Or over here, there's empty spots here, it's
So
fine.
basically, park up against concrete, right, just not in the middle?
Yeah, the middle section is where the cars line.
Yeah. You can park against any curb, just not in the center.
And if you need a handicap spot up here in front, that's fine. You can take those, that's not a problem.
Right. Any curb,
Any curve.
park against the curb.
So that-
Because you don't swing into the parking spots and then back out, right? You're just straight on.
And then they come through underneath, yeah. All right. Okay, thank you, sorry.
Sorry.
Thanks. All right. You're welcome, because she wanted you to all go move your cars.
So basically, if you can park up next to it,
And-
you're good. But there's that whole
Yes.
road that has no.
All right, so Jesus
When you
is,
go out there, you'll see it. Okay.
so Jesus is fulfillment of the prophecies, right?
Because nobody was there when I moved it.
Paul says this really nicely in Romans 3:21, right? Where but now a righteousness apart from the works of the law has been made known to us, although the law and the prophets, the Old Testament, Moses and the prophets bear witness to it, right? So Jesus points to the Old Testament and says, oh, the Old Testament bears witness to me.
The prophets were spoken.
All right. Number 4, how can Paul call us saints? What does saints mean?
Well, I grew up Catholic until I met her. And then I
Yeah.
saw the light.
I got you.
And saints have a whole different dynamic
Whole
meaning for us.
different dynamic, right?
Yeah.
So for Roman Catholics, what are saints?
Canonized martyrs
Martyrs, yeah.
or people that did miracles,
Yeah.
that then.
What did they show in their lives?
They earn
um,
things. Works.
work.
Didn't they show a, okay, well, let's get off the Roman Catholic thing. What does the word saint actually mean or connotate?
Body of Christ.
Set apart by God, justified.
Body of Christ.
Sort of, somewhat, kind of, yeah. Holy. Holy. Saints are people who are holy, right? So I think for Roman Catholics, a lot of times there is a holiness aspect to these super Christians, right? Because of what they've
Done.
done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, Paul calls Christians saints not because of what they've done, right? And so this is a thing that probably confuses some Roman Catholics. If you said that you are a saint, they would be like,
Yeah.
not a saint. And it's like, Paul called you a saint right here. What are you talking about? You are a saint. You are one who is holy. And that holiness is what?
Justified by His grace.
Justified by His grace, right? That holiness comes as a declaration of God. That holiness comes as a declaration of God. Now, there are, did you know, some of you know this, because I've said this before, or you may not remember it, but I've said it before. There are only two things that are holy. Only two things that are holy. The first one is obvious. Who's holy?
God.
God. And then, what else is holy?
The word.
His word is holy, it's not the only other thing. But wait, I said there's only one other thing. So what is the one other thing? Are you holy?
Yes.
Yep. Is his word holy? Yep. Is the church holy? Yep. Why are all those things holy?
Through the power of God.
Close.
God said they're holy?
Because God says they're holy. That's exactly right. There's only two things that are holy. God and anything he declares to be holy. So why are you holy? Why are you a saint? Because God declares it. Not because of your works, Roman Catholic. Former Roman Catholic.
No more, no more. Yeah.
I saw the light 35 years ago.
Yeah, I did hear.
Right? Not because of your works. Right? Just like the hymn writer says, thy works, not mine, O Christ. Right? You are holy because God declares you to be holy. You are justified because God declares you to be justified. You are sanctified because God declares you to be sanctified, which means holy again. All right? So, yeah, our holiness is a declaration by God. Right? It's nothing that you do, nothing that you can do. And that's why there's only two things that are holy. God and anything he declares to be holy. All right? We'll ask Vicar. Here we go. We'll quiz Vicar. So Vicar.
Yes.
What are the only two things that are holy? He's never heard it before. All right, first one's obvious.
God.
God. And?
I feel like this is a joke, so I'm going to say donuts.
Different spelling, but correct.
He's actually a pretty quick wit. He is. He says so many things that goes right over Pastor Adam's head. Well, you know we had to bring him into the fire. So why are people holy and the church is holy and his word is holy? Because God, everybody, declares them to be holy.
Yep.
So there's only two
I
things
said
holy.
that this morning.
Is it?
No, you didn't.
There's no way of knowing they didn't record men's Bible study in the morning.
Wait a minute, I was there. I have a poor memory.
Because we were talking about the difference between justification and sanctification.
Oh, you did do that.
Oh, okay.
I'll give him credit for that.
So yeah, so I mean, I think it's a good one, right?
Yeah.
God's holy and anything he declares holy, right?
Yep.
All right, day 2. Goodness gracious, we're never going to get done. All right, day 2, Romans 1, 8-13. For I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because your faith is proclaimed in all the world. And God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of his Son, that without ceasing I mention you always in my prayers, asking that somehow by God's will I may now at last succeed in coming to you. For I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you. That is, that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. I want you to know, brothers, that I have often intended to come to you, but thus far have been prevented, in order that I may reap some harvest among you as well as among the rest of the Gentiles. I am under obligation both to Greeks and to barbarians, both to the wise and the foolish, so I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. Oh, I read too much. All right. All right, for what is Paul so thankful?
For all of you.
Faith of the Rome, faith of the Roman.
Faith of the Romans, right? And what specifically is he thankful about their faith? He's thankful about something specific.
It's
Proclaiming all that and how far out it reaches.
Their encouragement.
And he's able to
Say
draw
that again?
strength.
Because they proclaim through all the world.
Their faith is known all over the place. When you talk about faithful Christians, people say, Romans.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying. That's what he is thankful for. He is thankful that their faith is so strong that everybody knows about it. It's kind of cool. None of you were like wrong, just not as right as Sharon. How does
That's one.
that's one? I know. We've been doing this for so many years, and you've never had one. I mean,
That's right.
totally kidding. I know that was really. Whew. Wow, that was a good one though.
That was.
All right. How does this compare with the church in 1 Thessalonians 1, 2-10?
They said it's the same.
Yeah, it's pretty similar, right? I mean, they're known for their model response to the gospel, for their joy, the evidence of their faith, hope, and love, right? I mean, very similar. I think what Paul's getting at here, I don't know, he's complimenting them. I don't know if he's trying to manipulate them at all, or I mean, I assume it's a genuine compliment, but you know how
Competition.
so impressed by your faith that is known throughout the world, and then they're like, is it really? Maybe we should live that way, right? I don't know, it's probably a real compliment, and for the Thessalonians, it's the same way, right? So when you talk about Christians around the world, right, man, Romans and Thessalonians, they are faithful Christians in this Roman Christian world.
I think in the Thessalonians account, he goes one step further too, and he says specifically, you're also an example to the nations around you, or to the places around you.
Which really becomes probably pretty similar to what he's saying to the Romans, right? He uses a lot more specific language with the Thessalonians than he does with the Romans, right? But if their faith is known, right, they're probably a good example too. So that's why I assume that it's right. He's not saying less about the Romans, even though he's
But he's been to
one phrase instead of a paragraph.
He's been to Thessalonica by this time.
He's been to Thessalonica, I know. So it's
he's
kind
gonna
of.
know more personally about
I
that.
know. So that's an interesting thought. I don't know.
Like,
Quite possibly he knows the Thessalonian Christians more intimately, so he at least says more about them. That could well be, actually. But see, then as he's traveling around Thessalonica and Corinth and all these places, right? He hears about the Romans. He hears about the faithfulness of the Romans, and so he's able to say, I mean, it's kind of like, well, everywhere I go, people know the faith of the Romans, right? The Thessalonians, right, maybe he is able to say, wow, I was with you and I was impressed by these things, and now that I'm out and about, people know about these things too, right? So maybe he has more to say because he knows them more intimately. I don't know. That's an interesting, I don't know that we would have an answer for that, but it seems kind of logical. I think it's a good...
But Pastor, do the Romans get not more credit or more deserved credit, but was there persecution going on at this time of Christians in Rome?
In 55, probably not a lot.
Okay.
Not more than anywhere else, right? I mean, the open, well, I take that back.
It's kind of on a...
Nero is kind of at this time.
And so that's what I'm wondering about, if
Nero this time?
They're really...
No, Nero's after this. Paul probably dies in Rome under Nero, and Nero's the first great persecution in Rome, right? Now, there's obviously persecution because Paul gets a bad rap and gets arrested, and there's back and forth, and the Roman governors don't know what to do, and they're going to let him go, and then he says, I need to see the emperor, and so they have to ship him to Rome. So the persecution is much more localized and probably much more Jewish in nature at this time.
Yeah.
Although there's a growing Greek resentment of Christians as well. And then you really don't have anything. You don't have anything just really formalized until Nero, and that's really the first great persecution, and it's really only Rome. So really only Rome, and then you have to get into I don't know when's the next great ones. I mean, I don't know. You've got all kinds of them. I can't keep them. Yeah, is it Diocletian or Vespasian? I don't know which one's when, right? But you start having. What's interesting, I guess, kind of about persecution is sometimes it's very localized, like Nero in Rome. Sometimes it's empire-wide, right? So you have, I think it's Vespasian who has, I can't keep them straight. Some of them have empire-wide persecution, destruction of churches, the seizure of property from Christians, the jailing and execution of pastors, and sometimes it's a very localized kind of persecution, and then sometimes that kind of persecution wanes and it kind of goes away for a time, and you really have this for the first 250 years of Christianity until you get to Constantine, and then it pretty much ends. Finally, when Constantine becomes sole emperor, he shares the duties with a guy who kind of persecutes Christians, but when he becomes sole emperor, that ends, right? And is it, what, 323?
320, yeah, 323, 325 is when the
Edict of
council was
Constantine.
called. So,
No, so it's earlier than that. It's
319.
Like 319, maybe the Edict of Constantine legalizes
Yeah.
Christianity.
But
the Edict of Milan.
this Thessalonians, verse 6, you became imitators of us in the Lord, for you welcomed the message in the midst of severe suffering.
Yeah, no,
The joy
there's
given by help.
a lot of like local persecution, particularly by Jewish communities in the towns and cities. Sometimes by the Greeks. I mean, the people in Athens get really pissed off at Paul because he is speaking against their gods, and the silversmiths cause a riot, right? So there's some, but it's not. There's in contrast, it's a very, very little until Nero in Rome, and then some of the emperors afterwards, right? So what happens is that Nero blames the Christians for all of the problems in Rome, and then emperors that come later start blaming Christians for the downward trend of Rome and Roman culture, right? I mean, Rome is doing badly, and Christians get blamed, and so that's what leads to a couple of the empire-wide persecutions. So, all right. Explain why you would or would not like to belong to such a congregation as Rome or Thessalonica. I don't know. Anybody have anything there that they want to share? What I mean, wouldn't you want to be a part of a congregation that like lived out the love, joy, and peace of Christ, right? I mean,
Vibrant, alive, Christ.
man, I know a lot of people that are members of churches that aren't like these places. I don't know why you would want to stay. I don't know. Anybody have anything to add there?
I think it was a church where you could give support and get support.
Right.
So it was an exchange.
Right.
That's the important part. And if you're not getting an exchange, then
Right. I mean, if they have a joyful response to the gospel and live in faith, hope, and love, right? I mean, what could be wrong with that? All right, number 6A, for what is Paul praying?
He wants faith all over the world.
Yeah, he's thanksgiving for their faithfulness, that it's shown throughout the world, and
God would let him go to Rome.
that God would let him go to Rome. B, why is Paul anxious to see the people?
I said to be edified and encouraged.
Right, that mutual encouragement that Carol talked about in verse 11 before, right? I told you we were going to get to verse 11, right? That mutual encouragement in the faith, and to reap some harvest, right? So he's excited to go and find new converts that can come into the Roman church, right? Yeah, he's anxious to win new converts. I think the minister to them, I don't think you were wrong, Mike. I think the ministering to them is all part of that mutual encouragement, life, etc. What opportunities do we have to mutually encourage each other in the faith? What opportunities do we have to mutually encourage one another?
But the prayers for others when they're going through life's challenges.
All right, prayers for others when they're going through life's challenges. Right. That's why I always try to mention to people, right, if you're going to pray for somebody, tell them that you're praying for them. It is of no encouragement and support to them if you don't actually tell them, right? I mean, if you put a family member in the prayers at church, you should tell the family member, hey, by the way, our church prayed for you on Sunday, right? You should let them know that. I don't know, I think a lot of times people don't actually know that, but that's part of that mutual support and encouragement. I mean, that's why we're praying, right? We don't pray to coerce God's will. We don't pray to get God to do what we want. We pray, so that our will, so that we grow in relationship with God, and A subset 1, so that our will kind of grows to align with God's will, right? So we can truly pray, thy will be done, and be glad and joyful that his will is done, right? But the second reason that we pray is to mutually encourage and support one another.
Yeah.
Right? So